Today I've come to what is a very local church to me. As history goes, about 2,000 years ago, the Romans built a whole series of forts from east to west from around here. And it's believed that there were several Roman forts, certainly very, very close to here. And within the first probably couple of hundred years, it's believed that there was also a church built inside one of those Roman forts. Now, this particular church, though, the earliest records that have been mentioned on the internet are from about 900 years ago, where a lot of the stones, if not all the stones, to build this church were actually taken from Hadrian's Wall. The church was finally decommissioned, I think it was in 1978, and at that point they then stripped out everything from inside. I'm right next to a farm here, and you are supposedly allowed to go and get the key from the farm to have a look inside. But because it's all stripped out, I'm not overly interested in what's inside, because it's just going to be an empty building with just looking out for the windows. I think it's a grade 2 listed building. It's still being cared for. There is a notice on the doorway, just a warning notice about some work they're doing to deal with the damp and everything, so it is actively still being looked after. It's been a really frosty night, and it's actually the first probably proper sunshine we've had for a long time. I've had a wander around here. The ground is solidly frozen, and I think that this morning's task is to try and see what sort of images I can get from here. Not necessarily on the church or the gravestones or anything. It's a really large graveyard, but it might be a combination of wide angle through to macro, or even a large telephoto lens, because I've spotted a nice small bell on top of the church there. One of the biggest problems I'm seeing today is certainly the sunlight is low. You can probably see by the shadow on my hand how low it is here, and it's not going to get much higher because of the time of the year. I can hear the main road because we're not that far from it, but hopefully it's also picking up on the microphone as well, the sheer amount of birds here. I did get my app out to list what birds were being heard, and it's come up with probably about 6 or 8 different species around here for starters. And I know it hasn't picked everything up because I've also seen 1 or 2 that it hasn't mentioned as well. For my first image, I'm concentrating literally on the entrance as you walk in, and gone fairly low level here, and I've used my 16mm lens. Also stuck on the polarizer. Now it probably doesn't show well on here, but using the polarizer gives you this really dark blue more on the left than it does the right, and that's one of the downfalls for using a polarizer on the wide angle lens, because you get all this left hand sky nice and dark, and it doesn't really have an effect on the right hand side, purely and simply because of the angle of the sun. This time it doesn't matter so much to me, because the left hand part of the image is in actual fact all open blue sky, whereas the right hand side is all covered in the trees. Now, it would be nice to have possibly something better in the foreground rather than the pathway, but I'm sort of limited here as to what I can use because of the sunlight, and in actual fact I'm using really the lines of the shadows to more or less lead in on the foreground. This may well be the oldest gravestone in the cemetery. I can't guarantee that for sure because I haven't looked at every single one, but just interesting the way this has been really deeply carved out, and with the sun we've got at the moment, it's really, really nice for all the texture and everything. So it could well be that this one is certainly of its time, where the stonemasons would be dealing with these much bigger characters. And if it is, it's fortunate really, because obviously with all the moss and lichen and everything growing over it and the wear and tear, this still sits prominent. So I'd look to get this one in the photo as well. Getting the church in the background, I've moved so that I can still keep the window in frame and really get this wide selection of the various gravestones as well. Still kept the polarizer on. Not sure how much I really like it with the blue sky running sort of really deep. But what I might actually do as well is just take a picture rotating the polarizer around so it has a much less effect on the sky. So that sun has got quite a bit of power to it, and I don't know if you can see that it's really burning off the frost here quite quickly. Just trying to incorporate the bright sun in this type of image here, but exposing more for the sky rather than the foreground. Got all these snowdrops dotted all around here, and the trouble is, I think, is that there's a lot of leaves in here as well, and I'm first of all trying to make sure I don't stand on any, and I'm trying to use this large gravestone here with the cross in the image, and my biggest problem is I've got these branches coming out in front of it, so I'm not sure whether I like it or not. In some ways it's distracting because you've got these branches all there, but at the same time as well it's showing the fresh new life of the snowdrops coming through. And I've got this really old gravestone which I can't see the date on it. It's looking like towards about 1890 on it, stuck up there inside the trees which are growing down through it as well. Even though it's quite a small church we've got here, it's actually quite a big graveyard. You just keep getting surprises as you go around. Right at the bottom here, come across this bench which has got engravement on there: before ye rest for a here sit and think and pray, 1926. So that's 100 years old that's been sat here, and it's right on this corner of the hill. Got the river Irving run down the bottom here. But I do know for a fact that there is a footpath that runs down there, because there is a stile over the fence further up there, because I did come here a few years ago, so I may well progress down there and have a look to see if there's anything worthwhile photographing once I've finished here around the church. I've switched over to my 24-105mm lens. I can be in a restricted space, probably a bit like I am now, trying to get this entire angel in focus, but I want to be low down to take out all the background distractions. So I could zoom out to about 60mm, whereas alternatively the cross that's just through the back there, I was taking an image of that a few minutes ago, and I wanted to get the separation from items behind it and really compress the whole image, which means you can zoom in sort of towards that 105mm. It's now midday, and you can see behind me that the sun is still fairly low. I've been here, 2 hours, and there's just so much to see. You just don't really usually take it all in on something like an old graveyard. You can wander around here, and all these headstones are so different. Yes, you get the basic ones like these sort of shapes with the arches and everything, or more of a square shape, but you tend to get a lot of these others, like the angel I was photographing over there a little while ago, the bulk standard crosses, which come in all sorts of shapes and formats, but then you get these things with looks like a bowl on the top, and again these sort of crosses just through here, It's almost like a Celtic cross, and there's pillars and things like that. There's just so much to see, but I was going to start heading back towards the church to possibly change over lenses again, or to look for what other images are down there for the lens I've currently got at the moment, and come here and just spotted the church through these gravestones, and it's a classical example of where a much longer lens can now really compress all the perspective and turn really have the church itself in focus, but then have all of the gravestones here out of focus. I could probably do with a slightly longer lens, but I'm just going to have to crop the image post-processing. Finally got the big lens out, just trying to take an image of the small bell tower on top of the church there. And the reason why I wanted the longer lens was I want to get back as far as I can so that it looks more like you're on the level of the actual tower. I could have used a much shorter lens and stood a lot closer to the church, but I'd have been looking totally up at the bell tower rather than more at its level. The only real problem I've got at the moment is lighting wise. The sun is more across to the right of us here, so you can see it's lighting up the side of the actual tower, but there's not really a great deal of light on the front or the bell itself. Now I'm hoping I can pull a bit more detail out on post-processing, but ideally it would be nice if it was probably somewhere behind the camera, so it would still gave me a little bit of side lighting, but the front was more illuminated with that nice warm light. I've walked down from the churchyard, which is up behind these trees, and you come down through the banks there, and I've walked along the river here, which has just been really nice to have a wander around, enjoy the scenery. This is the River Irthing, and it's running quite a pace, but it's not obviously nowhere near what it's been. You can see across the other side of the bank there how high the river has been, and it's worn it away. Just a little bit further up there, it's just took a massive chunk of the bank out, and all the fence that's up there is just dangling over the edge. But I've come across here, and this is still nicely in the shade for keeping all the frost. So I was taking some images of the frozen water here. When you look at these, I've got the macro lens out now, and the frost that's on these, you get all the individual pieces of frost on there, all looking like pieces of glass. But at the same time as well, because the temperature has risen throughout the morning, the frost is starting to melt, and you're getting these like orbs of water appear on there as well. So it's really interesting seeing it on the macro side. What have I got from today? Well, I came here with nothing in mind of what sort of images I was going to take. So it was quite interesting the process I took, because straight away I knew I needed to start getting images that included the frost, because it was only going to be here for so long. And for that I opted for the wide angle 16mm. I just left that on the camera and walked around the entire place looking for where I could actually use it to get an image that I was after. And from there I went to the 24-105, which gave me that zoom option, and with the depth of field being able to isolate objects, so it gave a totally different perspective to the images. I then flipped to the large 150-600, and then finally, when I'd finished around the church and churchyard, I went down to the river, down the footpath, had a nice wander around there, and eventually stumbled across loads of frost actually still within the shade. when I noticed the actual small pieces of frost on the plants and everything, I then switched over to the 100mm macro. So it was a case of having all of my kit with me, which meant that I'd got it available for use. Certainly images that I've got here which would probably benefit from different times of the year, different times of the day, different lighting, could certainly all be improved. But to me, it's a starting point. I'm hoping that the images that I've showed are certainly of reasonable quality, that I was happy with them, but I think, like with all things, there's improvement for whatever we do. Thanks a lot for watching.